perhaps a bit about myself would be helpful to set the frame. I spent most of my working life looking at the dynamics of human beings, human organizations, human institutions, human systems, and how they respond to change under conditions of high stress and low resource. And the unconscious dysfunctional behaviors, the violence, the breakdown, the crazy behaviors that emerge under those conditions. And I now find at this stage of my life that all of that is absolutely appropriate in terms of where we're going today. So that's been the human side. I also have a background in maths and physics and systems dynamics. And the last 3.5 to 4 years, I've been particularly working on the dynamics of feedback processes in climate change, how they start to accelerate the process, can push it out of control, and this sense of moving into a system that goes into turbulence, out of control, and its interaction with the human, within which that sense of, oh my God, what's going to happen next-ness pushes us into crazy behaviors, gives us the foundation, I think, for climate change and violence and dysfunctionality. So, enough of the background. How bad is bad? Well, the indications are that it's a lot worse than our worst nightmares led us to dream and think possible. I've just come back from Seattle, where we had a workshop on worst-case scenario that brought together a group of 20 gurus from different disciplines in the world, looking at exactly that issue. How bad is bad? What is the worst-case scenario? And I'm going to introduce this. I need a colour pen for that screen, for that flip chart. Is there one around?
Yeah, on your desk in front of you. Yeah,
on the desk in front of you, right? Around here, hiding behind you. Thank you. People talk about the distribution of, if you like, the numbers of events of a particular probability. So high probability down here, low probability here. And we get, sorry. Yeah, this is consequences here, the probability. So very low consequences. It doesn't really matter if it happens. Hundreds and hundreds of events can be in that domain. So we have a graph that starts up about here somewhere. And then as the impact, the consequences goes up in this direction, you get fewer and fewer. And you have a graph that looks sort of like that. Very, very high consequence, very high impact events are seen to be once in 1,000 years or whatever it is. Very low probability. Now we develop what's called a fat-tailed. I love this. It sounds like something out of Australian behaviour of jumpers. A fat-tailed distribution that begins to develop a higher probability of something with a very high impact. And as we're looking now at the cataclysmic behaviours in climate change, this is developing more into a spike of a higher and higher probability of a very high impact event. And risk management is now talking about bringing in a different discipline from the normal, fairly stable managerial response systems to say when we have this kind of phenomenon emerging, we have to move into what we call catastrophic risk management, which mobilizes resources to deal with a high probability, high impact, high consequence event. And that means we move into emergency behaviors at very high level in the system. So I'll leave that as a background to what I'm going to bring to you. Now, there is no way that the content that I'm bringing can be put into a 25-minute presentation, or 23, whatever it is at the moment. So what I've done, I've brought enough. There's not enough to go around for everybody, so please just first come, first serve. Evelyn will be at the seated custom over here, my colleague and wife of 30-odd years standing. Hello, Evelyn. We have the planet Earth, we have a problem, feedback dynamics and the acceleration of climate change, which was the Westminster briefing delivered in the House of Commons to the all-party parliamentary group on climate change about 18 months ago, published just a year ago, almost today. There are 5 presentations in there, 2 from myself, 1 from Peter Wadhams on ice, 1 from Peter Cox on carbon sinks and feedbacks, one from Deepak Rugani on the tropical rainforests in the Amazon area and the instabilities that that causes. So that will give you a good resource. Buy one, get another one, give one away, use them as base materials for seminars. If there aren't enough here, we can order more. Give Evelyn a card or an address, and we'll make certain we can get them to you. Then last June, I had the privilege of being involved in the Tailberg Forum in Sweden, and we had a 2-day science workshop on tipping points we dare not cross, with Jim Hansen, myself, Bob Carell from the States. We had Johan Rockström from the Swedish Environment Institute, Carl Folker from the Resilience Alliance, and about a dozen more of us. And this is a presentation, again, on feedback dynamics and accelerated change, which Bo Ekman, who directs the Tailberg Forum, said we've got to have that available on a wider basis. So they hijacked me before I came back on the plane and put me in a big studio, and I had to do the whole thing again at 8 o'clock in the morning just before I left. And then they put that together as a pretty high resolution DVD, which can again be used as a seminar resource or as a different media with the material. This is slightly more up to date than the book, and today is slightly more up to date than this. So without more ado, let's get into the material itself. Planet Earth, we have a problem. I'm going to start by looking at feedback dynamics and the acceleration of climate change in a global context. Most academics and most researchers tend to start with a silo, a small area of research, and then try to integrate that upwards. I'm starting the other way round by looking at the global dynamic as a whole system. So the first few slides won't tell you anything new about climate change, but they'll get us thinking global structure level. Okay? So it's a way in that is slightly different from usual. Let's start, first of all, with the cause of the problem, us. And we have one of Gaia's biota. By the way, when Jim Lovelock wrote The Revenge of Gaia, it's because we've done something that deserves revenge. So maybe that's right at the heart of violence. What is violence to an environment, and the environment is responding. Think about it. Global level. Obviously, this is one of no, I don't want that up there. Go away. Can you get rid of it? Possibly. Yes. Thank you. This is one of our Gore slides. And we bumble along fairly low levels of population until we start getting in resources that are beyond the immediate harvest. And as a biota, we have learned to extract resources from the past and bring them into a present. And that has set off coal, oil, gas. By the time I was born, we were at about 2.3 billion, just below that. I am not responsible for what happened next, not entirely. I've had 2 children, but so they're somewhere in here. In my lifetime, what an extraordinary phenomenon, and expecting to stabilise by 2050-ish.